What is up, my friends? Today we are talking about Temtem team composition, and before we do anything else, I want you to take a look at this team I have on the screen here. We've got 5 Temtem, and I want you to pause the video, take a look at this team, think about it a minute, tell me in the comment section below what's wrong with this team, what kind of weaknesses do they have, what are they going to have trouble with, tell me why it is not a good team, and we will discuss throughout this video what actually is going on here. So today we're going to talk about how we should design a team. We're going to talk about all the things that you need to keep in mind if you're going to develop a viable Temtem team. I'm going to give you some resources you can use to help you plan, and hopefully after this you'll be able to create an awesome Temtem team you can take right into competitive. So with that, let's get right started. Many battles are won and lost before the battle even begins. That means planning ahead is going to be one of the most important things you can possibly do. And in that spirit, I have a couple of resources for you guys. The first one being here, Temteam. So this is a team builder that you can use to select all the Temtem that you want to use. You can look at all their stats. You can plan ahead what you want their TVs to be. You can choose their moves. You can choose their traits, their gear. This will let you have total control over every aspect of your team. It lets you look at tier lists. It allows you to look at your coverages and resistances, which we'll get more into later. You can share your teams with other people to get feedback. So this is going to be an excellent tool to use in order to plan. So like I said, guys, planning is going to be one of the most important and crucial elements. You want to make sure that you have all these things that we're going to talk about kept in mind when you're planning. So let's talk about specifics. So I have pulled up here a type chart because, as many of you probably already know this, one of the biggest things you need to keep in mind is diversity. Now, the first type of diversity we're going to talk about is type diversity. You want to make sure that your team doesn't have any glaring weaknesses in which one type or two types of Temtem will be able to essentially take down your entire team because all your Temtem are weak against that team. Back on our example team, the bad team, we're going to go ahead and use the Temteam tool to check out the team resistances. Essentially here you can see all of your Temtem lined up. You can see the resistances. A 0.5% means they resist that move, while a 2 or a 4 means that they are weak to that move. Now you can see here, this team is highly weak to electric type Temtems. So if you were to go against a team with 1 or 2 electric types, you will have a hard time stopping the momentum that team can get because they'll be able to use electric type moves and kill most of your Temtems. Without getting rid of that threat, your entire team could lose just on that aspect alone. You can eliminate the risk of having your entire team die to 1 or 2 specific types by giving yourself a solid range of defensive coverage. So I have a team here that I'm actually using myself. I built this team. Go ahead and check the resistances of this team. Each Temtem has about 1 or 2 weaknesses and resistances, but you can see that most of them are spread out across all of the types. So there's not 1 or 2 types that are going to completely obliterate my team. Because you never know what your opponent will bring to the match, you have to make sure that all the types are accounted for and most of your team composition will be able to handle anything that comes at it as a whole. We've talked about diversity in terms of defensive coverage, but on the flip side, you also want to make sure that you have good offensive coverage. You can use the same tool, the Temteam we've been building off of, and go to team coverage here. Now you're going to have to select moves for each of your Temtem in this section here before you can do this, but once you do that, you'll be able to see each Temtem will have a green box for it being super effective against that type and a red box for the type resisting the move that it has. And from this team, you can tell right here, it's going to have trouble against mental types. So mental types are going to resist 4 out of 5 Temtems on this team. So this is another example where, because we don't have good diversity in the offensive moves in this case, Temtem are going to have a lot of trouble dealing with a specific type that it didn't account for enough. So again, diversity is very important on the defensive and the offensive side because it prevents you from having 1 or 2 types completely dominate you because you didn't account for them. So my example team, we can do the same type of analysis by going to the team coverage tab. And as you can see here, it's not nearly as glaring to have one individual weakness that the entire team isn't going to be able to be super effective against. Now, I may have a little bit of trouble with crystal and earth types, as you can see here, as we have 3 resistances to each of those types. However, particularly for earth, we've also got 2 Temtem that are super effective against it. So I've got 2 relatively good counters to that type, which won't be too bad. Now, crystal, on the other hand, may be a little more challenging. I do have a counter to crystals with fire types, but I may want to consider adding some more moves in it that are good against crystals in order to cover up this. But overall, this isn't a bad offensive coverage to have. We have a wide spread out area of both resistances and super effective. So this is something you want to keep in mind, guys. Make sure all of your moves are diverse in the sense that they can hit multiple types super effectively and not be heavily resisted. The next thing I want to talk about is Temtem roles. For each Temtem, you're going to want to plan ahead how to specialize this Temtem in order to do the specific role that you want. Now, this can be anything from a fast physical attacker, a fast special attacker, a defensive support, a fast support, and anything else that you can think of. So for this example, I have a Mastium that I am going to choose how to specialize it. Firstly, you want to do is look at its stats. You want to make sure you use the strengths of the Temtem. So for this one, it's got a very high attack stat, and the way I'm going to use this Mastion is to put all my TV points into attack and speed so that it can be an all-out attacker. I'm going to make sure that everything that I use as far as TVs, gear, and techniques is all going to be aligned with creating the specific Temtem to perform that specific role. Here is an example of a Temtem that would be suited to the support role. Now, support role's job is to, as you hear in the title, to support. So it's not going to be charged particularly with attacking, but giving your team some sort of effects. As you can see here, there's all kinds of moves that have an effect, whether it be to take a hold off of a move for a teammate, recover stamina, increase defenses, to sleep an enemy Temtem, to cure poison. Now, this Temtem has all kinds of options that you can use for support, depending on what kinds of threats you want to eliminate or what kind of status effects you would like to get rid of. Now, because support Temtems don't typically rely heavily on using attacks, you don't want to put too many TV values into your attack or special attack stat. Instead, you want to primarily either rely on your speed to be able to get off some of the moves quickly, or defenses so that you can stick around longer and support your team as long as possible. With roles, diversity is going to be just as important. You want to make sure that you don't have too many roles of a similar nature so that a counter can come along and take out your entire team. So for this example, I'm using my team again here. I've got a fast special attacker, a fast special attack / support. I've got a defensive, physical, and special mixed attacker. I've got a fast physical attacker, and I have a mixed attacker. So all of these Temtem will be able to do different things according to whatever I need for the situation. Now, here's why this is important. Let's say, for the sake of argument, in our bad team here, 4 out of 5 of these Temtems are special attackers with high special attack stat, special attack TVs, and special moves. The reason this is bad is because if your enemy Temtem team has specially defensive Temtems, then 4 to 5 of your Temtems will do very little damage to that Temtem, making it hard for you to actually get through their team. So you're going to want to bring some physical attackers that can exploit the low defense stats of some high specially defensive Temtems. And this will help you weather different types of Temtems rather than, again, having that glaring weakness due to a lack of diversity. While we're on the topic of moves, let's talk about how choosing moves according to the role and the stats of your Temtem. Let's talk about how that's important. Now, let's say I wanted to have a mixed attacking Platypus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invest some TVs into both its attack and special attack. Now, if you were going to specialize it into only special attacks, you want to make sure that you only use special attacks, because if you're using a physical attack, it's not going to be able to take advantage of that stat, and instead it will be weaker because it will be using the lower attack stat. Now, this is a symbol for physical attack, this is a symbol of a special attack, and this is a symbol of a support or boosting move. Now, like I said, because this is a mixed attacking Platypus, I have both physical attacks and special attacks. So you're going to want to make sure that you match these icons, these types of moves, to whatever you're going to specialize your Temtem into, as far as whether it be a physical or a special attacker. When you're choosing attacking moves, make sure that you put on moves that are the same type of your Temtem. So as you can see here for my Platypus, I've got a water type move and also have a toxic type move. The reason that is important is because any move that has the same type as a Temtem gets a boost in its attack. So a Platypus using a water type move is going to be more powerful than, let's say, the Mix using a water type move, specifically because the type matches. Back to our bad example team here. What can you see wrong with this particular moveset right here that is going to be problematic? Now, there are probably a couple, one of them being that there's not much diversity here, but the biggest one is that this entire team moveset has entirely hold moves. A hold move is that you cannot use the move until you wait a certain number of turns. If it just had this little block here, that would be you can use it right away. If it has one little slash like this one, you have to wait 1 turn. If it has 2 slashes like this, you would have to wait 2 turns. So this Temtem actually cannot even attack until the second turn, because all of its moves are hold. You're going to want to make sure that you balance how many hold moves you have with how many moves that do not need any waiting. Another thing to keep in mind when you're choosing moves is you want to make sure to try to get synergies with other types of Temtems. Now, what a synergy is, for those you don't know, is a move that has an increased effect or an added effect depending on the type of Temtem you have paired with it. For example, this Kazuma has the move Turbo Choreography. Click on the move here, we'll find the move right here. So basically this move will increase the entire team's speed stat by 1 stage. Now if it were to have, let's say, Whiplump, which is a fellow wind type, then it would get all the entire team plus 2 speed. So try to keep in mind when you're imagining what Temtem to pair together, try to give each other synergies so that you can have the maximum effects of those synergy moves, while also keeping in mind that you don't give yourself too many weaknesses that your team can exploit. Now the last thing I want to talk about are traits and gear. Now traits are the hidden ability that every Temtem has, and gear is an held item that will give the Temtem an added effect. So for this Whiplump, I'm relying heavily on hold moves. As you can see, 3 out of 4 of my moves are hold moves. So my traits and sweatband are going to actually minimize the negative impacts of these hold moves. Now the trait patient allows me to restore 10% of my max stamina when using a hold technique. Now that will help me stay high on stamina because hold techniques typically are very stamina expensive. Same thing with my sweatband. It's going to allow me to find it really quick. The sweatband is going to allow me to restore 15% of my max stamina every turn. So because Whiplump is going to have a lot of stamina expensive moves, my traits and my sweatband, they are actually going to help me in minimizing the impact of those hold moves. Here's another example. Mastione is going to be an all-out physical attacker. So I have the move Rage here, which increases its attack by +2. I've got its TV values set into attack and speed. And I also have Pyromaniac trait, which increases its damage with fire techniques by 10%, along with the Fire Chip gear. Now that increases fire techniques by 10%. So between the trait, the gear, and this support move I have, this Temtem will have incredibly high attack values and will be able to be very specialized into its role, as everything that I've done is integrated well into being one specific thing. So there you have it, guys. That was my guide on competitive Temtem team composition. I hope you learned why this team we have in front of us wasn't a very good one. It had an over-reliance on hold moves, didn't have very good type diversity. So let's reiterate. What goes into good team composition? Team composition is comprised of type diversity, both offensively and defensively, making sure you have good synergies, specializing your Temtems into specific roles, TV training them accordingly, giving them techniques and gear that will give them that strategy that you plan for, and overall making sure that you have no glaring weaknesses that can be exploited by any individual type or team. So guys, I hope you liked it. Please consider liking and subscribing. If you guys need to know how to TV train, I've got a video. I'll link it to you. I'll link all of the resources that I use in this video for you, and go out there. Hopefully you use these tips to your advantage. Let me know if you guys find this helpful, if you are able to beat anyone because of what you saw here in this video. And overall, I hope you enjoy your journey in competitive Temtem, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.